Hello, and welcome to the second official Red Channel's 2024 election prediction with our Italian American correspondent, Jersey Mike. Recently, a series of gaffes, missteps, terrible debates, natural disasters, and undercutting from the sitting president have plagued the Harris campaign. And though we don't count our eggs before they've hatched on this channel, things are looking dire for her. Polling data is all over the place, but Jersey Mike and I will be assessing the damage state by state. Jersey Mike, what's your opinion on how this is all going to go down?
Well, I think Trump is still favored to take back the White House. Harris is still polling significantly worse than Biden did in 2020. And based on where things stand, I just don't see her holding on to the White House unless Trump completely implodes, which we know has never happened or in the past or never will happen because I think people are already used to Trump anyway.
Yeah, there's no bridge too far for him at this point. It's just he's Teflon in a sense. No one's shocked by what he has to say. Everyone's more or less got their mind made up. So, beginning in the Northeast, let's start with good old Maine. How do you see that going?
All right, so in the state of Maine, I like to start off with Maine Congressional District 1.
All right.
Back in 2020, it voted Democrat by 23 points. I think the Dems were maxed out in District 1 in 2020. They don't really have much room to grow, and I think they're going to lose a little bit of support. So, what used to be a 23-point margin, I think is going to be a 19-point margin in 2024. So, still solid blue, but less solid than it was. Well, just do dark blue, solid blue,
Okay.
uh, but it's going to be less solid than it was 4 years ago.
Why
Next
do you
will
think
be
that
Maine.
I was gonna say,
What?
why do you think they've lost a little ground in the first district, even slightly?
Well, let's if you take a look at the state of Maine as a whole, 63% of Mainers live in rural areas, and there still are some rural towns in the first district that Trump is going to improve in. If you look at York County, for an example, the entire inland section of the southernmost county is rural. You have towns like Buxton, Parsonsfield, and Limerick and areas like that that already vote red, where Trump can continue to gain like he will. They vote very similar to Western Maine. I
Mhm.
think there are some parts on the mid coast where Trump is going to improve. I think in some fishing towns in areas like Lincoln County, there are a lot of fishermen and dock workers that used to be more open to Democrats that are not really anymore due to the fact that Democrats are trying to pass regulations that will make it harder for them to fish
Mhm.
in Maine's waters.
Mhm.
So, due to those factors, and if you also take a look, Cumberland County is pretty big area wise, even though Portland is in the coastal part of it. You got the area around Sebago Lake that's mostly rural and is very similar to Oxford County. So I think due to the rural area shifting, the first district is going to see a slight decrease in the Democrat margin by about 4 points.
Interesting.
I also think Trump's going to do better in some suburbs like Gorham,
Mhm.
in areas in the outer Portland belt where people are starting to feel the cost of living, the higher cost of living, and no solutions by Democrats have been proposed.
Right. How are you feeling about the
So
second district?
I feel pretty good about the second district. As of right now, I have Maine CD2 going Republican by 11 points. This is just based on my popular vote. Uh, my popular vote estimate. Although I do want to add maybe you know what I think the second district's going to see a pretty heavy swing. So let's call it 13 points.
Mhm.
I think I think it's going to go pretty substantially red compared to where it was in 2020. I mean, it was already at 7.5 points in a bad year for Republicans.
Hmm.
I think I think the second district is very elastic, meaning it tends to move a lot quicker with the national vote than, let's say, the first district does. So I see it becoming more solid for Trump this year.
All right,
I have
so
this.
Maine at large.
I have that going Democrat by around 4 percentage points. So I'd say lean Democrat. It's going to be light blue. So it's going to be similar to where we were in 2016. I think maybe slightly to the left of 2016, but not much to the left.
Hmm.
I think it's going to be a better showing than 2020 due to the shifts happening in CD2. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. The second
Now,
district.
I'm going to make one disclaimer. I don't think it's impossible that Trump wins Maine at large. I think if the second district sees a bigger shift than I'm projecting, it's totally possible. But I'm only as good as the poll numbers I see right now.
Yeah, I mean it also Maine GOP has been notoriously weak, um,
Hmm.
and ineffective. So I think this prediction is probably going to be accurate. They just won't be able to mobilize enough people in the state to turn out, just because of really just because it's a state party problem and not a Trump performance problem.
Yeah, but I do think if the state party gets better leaders in the future, it's a state that could definitely flip 10 years down the road.
Absolutely.
Now, some people may agree, some people may disagree, but I think New Hampshire's going to vote to the left of Maine this year.
Hmm.
I'm saying this because if you take a look at how the state shifted from 2012 to 2020, Maine shifted 8 points from where it was in 2012. It voted for Obama by 16 points. And then in 2020, it voted for Biden by 8. So even in 2020, Trump still did better than Romney did in 2012.
Mm.
In New Hampshire, Obama won New Hampshire by 6 points in 2012, and Trump lost it by 7.5 in 2020. So if
Mhm.
you take a look, Maine is trending more to the right, while New Hampshire seems to be trending more to the left over the last three election cycles. Southern New Hampshire is becoming like a extension of Massachusetts. So I'm predicting New Hampshire will go Democrat by a 6 point margin, or likely Dem. I think Trump's going to do 1.5 points better than he did 4 years ago, but I don't think it's going to be a major improvement to where he wins the state or makes it as close as it was 8 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, for Vermont, I could say that's just got to be solid.
I'd say solid, but Trump, yeah, it's going to be solid, but the caveat is Trump will gain 3 or 4 points of support there.
Yeah.
So what used to be D plus 35 might end up being D plus 30.
Yeah.
And as I said, when election night comes, Vermont, I'm going to be watching because if Trump is able to flip a few counties in northern Vermont, that might be a good sign for Maine and maybe New Hampshire as well,
Yeah, yeah.
because it'll show improvement among white voters.
Voters in the north there, yeah, people in the Northeast Kingdom will behave like rural people throughout the rest of northern New England.
Yep. But the thing is, if Trump improves in the Northeast Kingdom, which is still slightly more liberal than, let's say, rural Maine, it's still a good sign because if he's improving there, he's most likely improving in other parts of New England region.
Definitely. Massachusetts, solid.
Solid. It's gonna. I think it's going to trend slightly in Trump's direction, but it's still going to be solid. If you take a look, Kamala is actually polling pretty weak compared to Biden 4 years ago.
Wow.
The polling average in Massachusetts only has her up by 26 points. In 20 20, oh, Biden won it by 33 points. That's a 7 point improvement for Trump. Now, people might say it's still a big margin, but the 7 point improvement is still a sign that he might be doing better in suburbs and smaller cities because there are a lot of towns like that in Massachusetts. I'll probably be watching Worcester County to see if Trump improves in the Worcester area because that would be a good sign for the election as well.
Well, this is also an area with a lot of high income whites. And I've seen with a lot of the polls, they somehow, Trump is up with basically every minority group, but then kind of, performing this on par or, performing worse with whites than he has in the past, especially high income whites. But then we have Massachusetts here as an example, full of high income whites, and Harris is doing worse. So something smells fishy about these polls.
Well, the problem with national polls are they oversample whites with a college degree. Like in some of these polls, they're expecting the amount of college graduates to go up like 60% than it was 4 years ago. Not going to happen.
That's absurd. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other point I'm trying to make, I make to people is if you talk to a suburban Trump voter who has a college degree who voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020, do you really think there's a big chance he or she's going to switch his vote in 2024?
I can't imagine that person.
No, exactly. So I think it's just because wealthy whites are oversampled in some of these polls compared to their actual proportion of the electorate.
Perhaps deliberately so.
hmm
All right. Rhode Island?
Rhode Island, I have at D plus 17, so solid. It's a 4 point improvement. I think Alan Fung may have started something that might take a few years to materialize, but I think in the future, not this year, but in future elections, the GOP should invest in bringing out Italian Americans to vote in Rhode Island because they're actually shifting to the right at a fast rate.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an improvement from 2020, but still a 17-point margin for Harris.
Yeah. Oh, Fung was so great. Fung was the best. Can't live without Fung. Um, what are we thinking about in Connecticut?
So Connecticut, I think, is going to slightly trend to the right. It was D plus 20 in 2020. I think it's going to be D plus 16. So solid blue, but 4 point improvement for Trump. Now, the reason why I'm saying a 4 point improvement for Trump because a very interesting poll from Connecticut's 5th district came out yesterday. This is the Northwestern Connecticut district. But keep in mind, there are some high income white suburbs in this district of Farmington, Avon, New Britain that are around Hartford that are in this district. And Biden won it by 12 4 years ago. Harris is only winning it by one right now.
Mm.
So I think if the 5th district of Connecticut is shifting right, I think the eastern part of Connecticut will. But the issue is Fairfield County. Are the Democrats maxed out in wealthy Fairfield County, or is that going to continue to shift left? That's why I only have the state going right by 4 points and not by a bigger shift.
How about New York?
Well, New York is actually a state where I think you're going to see a dramatic shift.
Really? Is
Yes.
it Manhattan? The Zeldin phenomenon?
Well, it's not just the Zeldin phenomenon. If you take a look, Trump is actually polling in New York City with now over 30% of the vote in New York City.
Right.
The actual margin is half of what it was in 2020. So, New York, I predict, will be Democrat plus 14, which means New York is actually going to be in the likely category and not in the solid category. The entire state is shifting to the right. I think there's a lot of people who are fed up with crime, The migrant problem in New York City is turning a lot of people against Dems, and a record number of Black and Latino voters in the region say they want Trump back.
Right. That's interesting, especially because I understand that the whole sort of the Latino vote is sort of broken up into thirds with sort of northeast metropolitan areas, the South generally, which is actually favorable to Republicans,
Mm,
and then the West Coast, which is also left leaning. But then now, because of this migrant crisis, Hispanic support has in the Northeast has been weakened.
I would agree with that because when they end up seeing people just get thrown into their communities and start causing trouble or maybe competing for resources that's already scarce, they're not going to think too kindly on the party in power if they're not doing anything to solve that. So I say New York is going to be likely D plus 14. I have New Jersey at D plus 13, so also likely D. And that's because there are similar trends going on in New Jersey than New York. If you take a look at 2022, the Republicans only lost the generic congressional vote in New Jersey by 10 points. In 2021, Jack Ciattarelli almost unseated the incumbent Democrat governor. And that is mainly due to some of the urban areas not being as blue as they were in the first Trump term, and due to, as I said, shift of Black and Hispanic voters, and the fact that Atlantic County, New Jersey, where Atlantic City is now voting Republican. That's going to move the state a few points to the right and into the likely column. I don't think there's anything else to be said about New Jersey. Is there anything you'd like to add, or?
Um, The Sopranos is my favorite show.
Yep, that's a
Uh,
good show.
that's about it. On to one of the most contentious states, Pennsylvania.
I believe Trump is going to win Pennsylvania by 2 percentage points.
Oh,
Well, 1.72, almost 2 percentage points. So that's going to be lean Republican. I am penalizing Trump in Pennsylvania. If I was to just go by the national shift, Trump would be up by 3 or 4 points in PA right now. However, because I'm doing what I call the margin of fraud and handicapping Harris by around 1.5 to 2 points. That's why I have it at 1.72.
do you
So
think he'll have any success mobilizing the large Amish population in Pennsylvania this time around?
I think we will. I mean, a lot of apparently people are saying there's videos of Amish people with Trump flags in the back of their buggies. So it's totally possible. It's just I hope the Trump campaign is making sure they either vote early or get these people to the polls.
Yeah.
But they
Um,
could be an important voter group.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially because their population doubles every 20 years or so.
Yep.
The future is very, very Amish and very Mormon. Um,
Well, looks like Weird Al's song "Amish Paradise" is going to become a reality.
one of my concerns was that the one of the ways this there may be an unfair edge for the left in this election would be importing. I think there are just like Ohio, 20,000 Haitians in Ohio. There are also 20,000 immigrants imported to a certain town in Pennsylvania. I forget specifically which. But do you think they're already covered in polling? Is that something we should be concerned about? Could there
I
be?
wouldn't. I wouldn't say I'm not too concerned about it because most of these people aren't on the voting rolls. They haven't been able. They're not. They haven't been able to be given citizenship yet.
Okay.
So this election, I'm not worried. But if she was to get elected, they would definitely be given citizenship by 2028.
Yeah, that could be a real problem.
Yep. But no, I don't think it's going to have much of an effect this year.
That's a relief. How about Delaware?
Delaware, I think, is going to trend to the right only because Joe Biden's home state advantage is gone.
Hmm.
I have Delaware going to Harris by D plus 15, so likely Dem. Keep in mind, in 20, but Delaware could actually end up being closer or competitive in the future because in 2016, Trump only lost Delaware by 11 points. Had Delaware just voted to the right by a few more points, it would have been in single digits 8 years ago. I think it only went overwhelmingly in 2020 because it was Biden's home state.
But now the home field advantage is completely gone.
Yeah, so I think as a result, Trump will gain support there.
Okay. How about Maryland?
Maryland's going to be solid D, but it'll also trend to Trump by a few points.
I say
Just
West
like
Vir-
Massachusetts,
Go
just
ahead.
like Massachusetts, Harris is having the same problem in Maryland. Biden won it by 35 4 years ago. Harris is only polling between 26 to 28 points ahead of Trump, which is still a 7 to 9 point improvement.
West Virginia, solid red. How about Virginia?
Virginia's going to be interesting. Now, I think Virginia's going to be a really hard state to call. It could honestly be a sleeper flip, but I'm not going to say that right off the bat. I think Virginia will be lean Dem. I'm predicting D plus 5 at the moment. I think Trump's going to gain there, but whether or not it will flip completely is yet to be seen. The polling's all over the place. There's some polls that have it tied, some polls only have Harris plus 1, but there's also a few polls that have Harris up by 6, 7. So I think 5 is a good conservative estimate for Virginia for now. What do you think?
Yeah, there are just so many psychopaths in the DC suburbs, so many Beltway psychopaths that, I mean, it's a good thing we even got Glenn Youngkin in there, but I mean, the way I think Virginia could be flipped is I understand there's a large Hispanic population that hopefully could be
Mhm.
appealed to, but I wouldn't count on it, at least not this election.
Yeah, but I do think Trump's going to improve there compared to 2020.
Definitely. Is
DC
it?
is going to be solidly blue.
So, of course, as to be expected.
I think it's going to it was D plus 87 in 2020. I have it at D plus 85, so Trump does 1.886 points better there, but it's DC. He's not going to win it.
Imagine if we had a time machine and we just forced Ben Franklin to see Washington D.C. today.
That would be funny. I don't think any of the people that around that time would be happy to see what it turned into.
I understand it, the way the founders set up DC to make sense in their day and time,
Well,
but
yeah, keep in mind, back in their day and time, there was only a North and a South. The U.S. did not have any states west of Pennsylvania at their time.
yeah,
So D.C. was the centrally located capital at that time because it was like the Potomac River was the border between what was considered the Northeast and the South.
yeah. But as a result, I think it has created this elite that's very separated from the rest of the US. And that's part of
Oh
why
yeah.
you see them favoring these sort of insane, out of touch candidates who really a lot of the country who votes Dem would have nothing in common with and wouldn't like if they simply weren't told to vote for these candidates by the mainstream media, which these people control. So on to North Carolina. How are we feeling about that?
I feel good about North Carolina. I think Trump's going to win it by 4, so lean Republican. I think North Carolina is going to revert back to where it was in 2016. So Trump plus 4. He won it. Trump won it in a bad year for him in 2020, and I just don't see it moving to the left. The early vote's looking really good there. The mail-in vote continues to get redder and redder for Republicans.
Hmm,
So I think Trump's going to improve in North Carolina.
fantastic. I understand that, especially the western half was affected by the hurricane, which Harris really FEMA has just been doing a terrible job there. Do you think that'll affect the outcome at all? I mean, it seems like. Do you think they're mostly fine?
Yes, I think it'll be mostly fine. Red Eagle Politics did actually a case study on Western North Carolina, and his numbers showed even if you had a Hurricane Sandy level drop in turnout, which I don't think they're going to have, it would only cost Trump 15,000 votes.
That's not a lot.
Yeah. And keep in mind, Asheville is a major liberal center in Western North Carolina, and they're the ones that are having a struggling time to vote. A lot of these smaller towns around outside of Asheville are up and running to vote now. The Trump campaign has been doing a good job at making sure people are able to vote there.
Wonderful. How are we feeling about South Carolina?
I'm going to say likely it's on the cusp of safe. I think it's going to be R plus 15, but because it's still at 15, I'm just going to say likely, but still a good margin.
Hmm.
South Carolina is not going blue, in my opinion.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was what I was gonna ask because I've seen people saying that like South Carolina was gonna be more likely to go blue than North Carolina. I'm like, what do you think of that?
Bullshit.
Yeah,
Or BS. Sorry, we'll have to edit that out. But
no, it's fine. We're deep enough in the video. I thought that was very strange. Why do you think it was that? Do you think it's some sort of operation by the Harris campaign? Where do you think people are getting that idea?
it's a sugar high. They feed off of fake polls that never come true. I mean, the current chair of the Democrat Party is a man named Jamie Harrison,
Hmm.
and he got his claim to fame for running against Lindsey Graham in 2020. And Jamie Harrison was pushing out these fake polls showing the race tied or him ahead. And then in the end, Lindsey Graham won by 12.
Hmm. Yeah.
So they get a sugar high. They push fake polls, but the state's not going blue.
Yeah, you'll never unseat Lindsay 2.0. I don't care if
Mhm.
he's an awful neocon, he's the last Southern gentleman, and it is not suspicious that he does not have a wife.
Not suspicious at all.
I don't I'm still gonna defend him. He's Lindsey Graham. Let's do
And at least he
Ohio.
votes with us on the judicial appointments.
Yeah. I was let's do Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and then Georgia, and then Florida. How's that sound? How are you thinking on
Good.
Ohio?
Likely are it's going to be Trump plus 11 or Trump plus 12. I think Trump's going to gain a few points in Ohio because the state's been trending Republican, and Trump already flipped Mahoning County in 2020. I think the Youngstown area is just going to get redder,
Yeah.
and I don't see the Dems ever rebounding there. I think the days of Ohio being a competitive swing state are over.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many people in this area, working class people, blue collar Americans who've been left behind. That's why they need to send 20,000 Haitians into Springfield to make it competitive again, or to even attempt to make it competitive again, because they've just lost this
It's
area.
not going to make it's not going to make a difference this election. 20,000 votes is less than 1% in margin wise.
And if we win, you can guarantee those people are getting sent back.
Oh, they are. Vance has been really hammering that.
Yeah.
It's coal. It's part of Kentucky. Part of Kentucky is in coal country, like West Virginia. A lot of Kentucky is a lot of blue collar workers, and it's also a very socially conservative state. So
Right.
not much to be said there. I'd say the same for Tennessee, solid R.
Yeah. How about Georgia?
Georgia, I have is lean R. I have it going to Trump by 3 points. Trump is improving among black voters, and just that improvement alone, I think, is going to push Georgia out of reach for Harris.
Well, I
Biden
was gonna
only
say,
won Georgia by 0.2%.
Well, I was gonna say that is supposedly how Dems were able to win Georgia in 2020 was the black vote in Atlanta, but I would also bet that they're all black conservatism. New black conservatives are coming out of either the Carolinas, especially North Carolina, or Georgia now. So um, I can't really see a scenario where Trump loses Georgia. I think that was really a fluke, if you will, of
It was like 2020's version of 2008's Blue Indiana.
yeah. How are we feeling about Florida?
Likely are. I think Florida's going to go to Trump by around 7 to 8. Well, I think it'll go by more. I mean, a New York Times poll had Trump up by 14 there, but I'm going to be conservative and say 7 to 8 points. So still a 5 to 6 point improvement from where we were in 2020.
Michigan.
Tiltar.
Here's a contentious one. A lot of
You're
Arab
right.
voters in Michigan who were potentially very upset by the Biden administration's performance in the Middle East, who may not show up to vote.
Along with that, the national popular vote has shifted just enough to make Michigan tilt R, but statewide polling has Trump up there by one. I'm being a little bit more conservative and saying it's going to be a nail biter, but who knows?
Right.
Definitely, Cornell West is going to be on the ballot there. So is Jill Stein, and I think that's going to. A poll came out showing that 41% of Muslim voters are voting for Stein, and then Trump is in second place, and then Harris is
Whoa.
in third.
41% of Muslims voting for Stein. That's wild.
And then the Council of Arab Americans released a poll showing Trump ahead of Harris by 1 point among Arab voters. This is not just Muslim voters; this also includes Christian Arabs. But that's still a devastating result for Harris because remember, Biden won over 60% of their votes in 2020.
Yeah.
I think Wisconsin will go Republican by 1.81 points. So Lenar.
Why do you say that?
Wisconsin is the most conservative out of the three Rust Belt states. In both 2016 and in 2020, it voted to the right of Michigan and Pennsylvania. And Trump has gained a lot of support in the Driftless region, which is the area on the Mississippi River in western Wisconsin by Iowa. Along with that, I was in Milwaukee last month, and I had a Trump supporting Hispanic Uber driver who was telling me that all the young inner city guys are saying they're voting for Trump right now, or most of the ones he picks up are saying they are.
That's
So
reassuring.
the fact that Milwaukee County is going to shift right a few points might just be enough, considering the fact that the state was decided by less than 1% in 2020.
Yeah. How are you feeling about Illinois?
Illinois is actually going to shift to the right. I have it as likely D.
Okay.
So Illinois, I have at D plus 13. Why am I saying this? Well, in 2022, Republicans nominated what was being compared to as the Doug Mastriano of Illinois. They said he was far right. The guy was named Darren Bailey. He actually showed up to a pro-Palestine rally after the election, but despite all this negative media attention, he only lost by 11 points.
Hmm.
So I think because people are moving out of Chicago, there are less votes in the northeast corner of Illinois, which is in turn making the state less blue than it once was.
Well, I was to say that's really the only reason that Illinois even goes blue, isn't it?
Yeah, Cook County is where the entire Democrat margin is.
Just people are just so intensely concentrated in this one area.
There's a lot of African Americans that are moving out of Chicago and going south.
I was
So
to say they're all going to Atlanta now.
Yeah, but that exodus is going to slowly over time make Illinois more red. And who knows? I mean, maybe in the future we'll get Illinois, they'll get Georgia. So 19 compared to 16. I mean, that's a 3 vote gain. So I'll take the trade. We might pick up a House seat or two there too if Trump gains a few points, like I think he will.
Yeah, and not to be too optimistic, but who even knows what we could do or how we could influence the people who do move to Georgia. Um,
Hmm.
especially because you can tell the Dems are playing for keeps this time. They
Hmm.
understand they have a lot to lose. The American people will feel that they are in control. A lot of their extra votes will go away once millions of people are deported from this country, assuming we win. We're going to take back the institutions. We're going to take back the education system. This is going to be a serious setback for the satanic globalist forces looking to take over this country. So, you know, who knows how different conversations might be, assuming we win.
Hmm.
Let's move on. Let's move on to Minnesota.
I have it at D+5, so lean D. I've been looking at the polling in Minnesota and based on the national shift. The Tim Walz pick has not helped Harris at all. In fact, she's actually polling worse in Minnesota than Biden did, despite picking the state's governor.
I don't understand. He's friends with school shooters.
I know. I don't know why he's not the most popular guy.
I how is that? I don't understand why he hasn't swept every state in the union just on that alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a winning coalition. But no, anyway, rural Minnesota is becoming even redder than it was,
Yeah,
and I think they're already maxed out in the Twin Cities.
I can get it. They have some large cities, but I do occasionally forget that Minnesota is a blue state. It
Yeah.
kind of surprises me that it doesn't vote like Wisconsin or Indiana or Ohio. You know.
Well, I think if Biden was still the nominee, it would be going red right now. Right as Biden dropped out, he lost the leads in Minnesota and Virginia.
Hmm.
But uh, I think uh, I think Minnesota is going to be closer than it was in 2020. Waltz did not help her at all, and she took a bad gamble. If she really wanted to win, she probably should have picked Shapiro.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. How are we feeling about Iowa?
Pretty good. I have it at likely R deep R+12.
All
It's
right.
going to trend 4 points to the right, and yeah, I mean it's probably going to be. Iowa is very similar to how Ohio votes.
Mhm.
Iowa is also another one of these Midwestern states, like Ohio, that voted for Obama twice, that now is voting for President Trump
Yeah,
by big margin.
all those people who got burned. And these are people who the media never addresses. Obama knows they're
Mhm.
there, but these are like it's almost like everyone forgets that there were Obama Trump voters. That there are people who voted for Obama twice who then voted for Trump. Um
Mhm.
yeah.
And they don't understand. And like like when talking about the 2016 election, they'll ignore 3 places that show this the most: Iowa, Ohio, and Maine second district.
Hmm.
Iowa voted for Obama by 6 points. It was bluer than Ohio was in 2012.
Hmm.
In 2016, Iowa voted for Trump by 9 points. You add 9 plus 6, that's a 15-point swing in just 4 years. Maine second district, even bigger swing. Maine second district voted for Obama by 8 points in 2012. In 2016, it voted for Trump by 10, 18-point swing.
Hmm.
Ohio. Ohio was a swing state in 2012, but Obama still won it by about 3 points, 2 to
Hmm.
3 points. In 2016, Trump won it by 8 points. So that's still a 10 to 11 point shift from Obama to Trump.
Mm. How are you feeling about Missouri?
Solid R.
I was say it's either solid or lean. I'm like same with Arkansas, got to be solid. Louisiana, I assume
Louisiana
solid as
solid.
well.
Yep.
Oklahoma, solid. North Dakota, solid. South Dakota, solid. Nebraska,
Well, we're going to have to go district by district again because Nebraska has the same system as Maine.
of course.
So Nebraska third district is solid R. Nebraska's first district is going to be solid R.
Okay.
And then Nebraska at large is solid R.
How about the second district?
This is where it gets slightly problematic. So Nebraska's second district is full of suburban voters,
Who could be
which,
squishy?
yeah, I have it at lean D. I think Harris will win it by 3. Biden won it by 6. I don't or light blue, lean D. Biden won it by 6. I don't think Harris is going to improve here. I think Trump will gain some of the votes back, but I still see it as D plus 3.
Well, as I say, because the behavior of suburban whites here could be indicative of the behavior of suburban whites generally across the country.
Yeah, if Trump improves there, like let's say Trump doesn't have to win there, but if he improves there relative compared to 2020, it's a good sign.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Um,
also includes the inner city of Omaha too.
yeah. How are we feeling about Kansas?
Let's see. It's either going to be solid or likely R. Let me take a look at where we are. I have it at solid R plus 18.
Montana,
Solid R.
Wyoming, I assume also solid.
Solid, yep.
Colorado,
Likely D.
even
I
after
think
there are some apartment complexes taken over by Venezuelan gangs.
Well, here's the deal. I think it's going to be D plus 9 or 10. It's going to be better than it was in 2020, which was D plus 13. I think the Hispanic vote trending Republicans going to help Trump a little bit there. The problem is the people with the most power in Colorado are the rich Denver suburbanites.
Hmm.
And unless Trump is willing to get them to swing back in his direction substantially, Colorado, I think, is still going to be a likely D state.
Who do you think would be more pro-Democrat, the gang members or the rich Denver suburbanites?
The gang members can't vote, so probably the suburbanites
How are you feeling about Texas?
likely are. I think Trump will win it by 9 or 10 points because of the Hispanic trends and Trump increasing in inner cities across the country. I think Texas has reverted, is going to revert back to being a moderately Republican state.
Nice.
I think the Democrat dreams of a Blexit or Blexis is never happening.
Yeah, I can't see that. Haven't we like they've just totally lost ground in the Rio Grande Valley, I believe.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. Running the spicy Latina, Myra Flores. She lost,
She
but
might win. Well, she might win this year. She's running again.
oh, she is.
Yep.
Man, I can't wait for her to be back in politics.
Yep. That'll be good.
Nice. All right. New Mexico.
Likely D. I think New Mexico is going to vote to the right of Colorado. I think it's going to be D plus 8. Trump's
Mhm.
going to gain among Hispanics. The question is, what happens in Santa Fe and Albuquerque? Do those places swing right, or do they still stay pretty far to the left?
Yeah.
I mean,
Idaho's.
Walter White has endorsed Kamala Harris, so I don't know. We'll
He
see.
did?
Yeah.
Cringe.
because he wants his daughters to have control over their own bodies.
How cucked do you have to be as a man to say that?
Very.
Man. Oh, I couldn't imagine. That's like their whole argument too. You can still be a man and vote for Kamala. You're protecting your daughter's rights. Oh, it's so cringe. Idaho, solid R.
Yep, solid R.
Utah, solid.
Yeah, solid. I mean, I think it's only going to be like Trump plus 20 or so, but that's still solid.
Arizona, how are we feeling about that?
I feel pretty good about Arizona. I have it at lean R, so R plus 2.
Okay. Just like Pennsylvania.
Yep. I think Arizona, once again, is another one of those states that was so close in 2020. Just a small shift among Latinos is going to flip it for Trump.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, even in I think every poll still represents Trump as having at least 40% Latino support,
Yep.
which is ordinarily more than what we would need to win.
Yep, I would agree.
So, how about Nevada?
Lean R, I have it R Trump plus 1.5.
Okay.
Once
And I mean,
again, the no tax on tips was a brilliant ploy for Nevada.
especially
Uh,
for that
the,
culinary union.
yep, the Hispanic vote is still trending our way, and the Culinary Union, which supports Harris, is sounding the alarm, saying if the election was held today, Trump would most likely win the state.
Hmm. How are we feeling about the West Coast, the left coast?
So Washington and California are solid D. Oregon is likely D.
Okay.
Not much to say. I think Oregon has a pretty large rural population, which I think will shift it to D plus 15. So it's still going to be D by a decent margin, but not as big of a margin as it was in 2020. Washington, it's just, I don't know. It's really hard to overcome Seattle. I mean, Trump actually did lead in a poll there against Biden, but that was before Biden got the curtain ripped. Biden got ripped behind the curtains.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, who knows how bad it would have been if Biden stayed in for
Yeah.
Dems. Alaska, I'd say likely R.
Likely.
So R plus 12 or 13. There's just a lot of native voters there.
I've heard their birth rates
So
are increasing.
yeah, so that's going to prevent it from being solidly solid, but it's still going to be R Republican enough to where it won't be a problem.
And how are we
And
feeling about Hawaii?
Hawaii, solid D, but the caveat is it is going to trend towards Trump.
Okay.
Trump actually improved in Hawaii the last two times he ran. I think Hawaii was 29.5 points last time around. It was 35 in 2016. So I think Trump might get Hawaii down to 25,
That's promising.
which is still a 10-point improvement from 8 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, you think Tulsi Gabbard coming out and basically supporting Trump um is it could help him at all in Hawaii, or is she
It
persona
could.
non grata there?
It could help them. I also think that Biden's handling of the Maui wildfires may also help Trump because of
Yeah.
how badly that was bungled. So this gives us our final electoral vote margin of 312 to 226.
I don't like to count my eggs before they're hatched. I think we have a lot of qualitative data that does point toward a Trump victory. I
Mhm.
think a lot of the polling data has been faulty. Um,
Mhm.
as I think you would agree as well, they've been oversampling high income whites and women. Um, I mean, it depends on the polls you look at. Even right wing polls have done this, but I would assume that it does seem like a little bit of a bit of a competency issue with the right wing pollsters. There are obvious polls, I think, from like Reuters and a couple other places that are just bought specifically to give people the impression that Dems are winning to further excite Dems and convince them to go vote so they aren't demoralized. Um,
Well, that would be the morning consult, which I call morning compost poll.
yeah.
Morning consult was the worst. I think. There was one poll that was pretty bad in 2022 that had D's up by 5 points on election day 2022. I think that was morning compost. Let me check. Yeah, yeah. Morning compost was D+5 before the midterms, and as we know, the actual national vote was R+3.
Mm.
So they oversampled Debs by 8 points.
I also just can't see this is my big thing. Kamala's only path to victory does seem to be, you know, recent arrivals, if you will, immigrants voting, and then also performing better with high income whites. But I just can't envision a scenario where Trump does worse with white people than he did in 2020.
I
Uh,
don't think he does.
yeah, we saw Dems pretending and celebrating that the red wave crashed in 2022. But I think that was because there was depressed turnout in the Midwest coupled with rhino candidates. Um, Trump wasn't on the ballot, and my understanding is we still won the popular vote in that election too.
I mean, yeah, but what most people need to realize is if Trump was on the ballot in 2022, he still would have won the electoral college based on the generic congressional vote.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think the national polls were actually pretty accurate for the national popular vote in 2022.
Okay.
They they had it at like R+2.8. The Republicans won it by 3. So
And
they did actually.
go ahead.
The issue was a lot of the Republican votes were just not distributed in the competitive House districts.
Right.
But 2022, I don't think is an accurate picture of what 2024 will look like because keep in mind Trump was off the ballot and you had more of your former suburban Republican Party show up to vote and not the low propensity working class voters that show up for Trump.
Well, especially with that whole tax on tips thing, I feel like Trump will do better with low propensity voters. I feel like they're going to come out, especially because
I,
of how much the economy has been suffering over these past 4 years.
I think they will too. I mean, Republican voter registrations have skyrocketed in Pennsylvania.
Well, this is the for the first time in like decades or so that there are actually more registered Republicans than Democrats. Isn't that right?
Yes, nationwide, yes.
That yeah, that's astounding to me.
And that's actually an interesting segue because you know what actually has been one of the most accurate indicators of the popular vote?
What would that be?
Gallup's party ID,
Really?
the Gallup poll. I think Red Eagle actually made a interesting post on examining this exact phenomenon. In 2020, Gallup's party ID had what you call it a Democrat party ID edge of D+5, and Biden won the popular vote by 4.5,
Hmm.
which is pretty close. That's only a half a percentage point off. Currently, Gallup has an R+3 party ID right now. We could end up seeing a scenario where Trump is underpolled and he ends up winning the popular vote by 2.5 points, which would be amazing. But it's in within the margin of error and the realm of range of possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans winning the popular vote would be a repudiation of it would
Mm.
shatter a lot of Democrats' minds. They'd get a
Because
reality
that's
check.
yeah, I hope Trump does win the popular vote.
I really do. I really do.
Here's the deal, and like Gallup was not only accurate in 2020, I can go all the way back to 2008. In 2008, they said there was a D+8 advantage. Obama won the popular vote by 7.2. That's only a difference of zero point 0.8. In 2012, they had an advantage of D+4. Obama won the popular vote by 3.9. In 2016, they had advantage of D+3. Clinton won the popular vote by 2.1. Still, less than 1 point difference between their party ID and the final popular vote. And
Mhm.
then, as I said before, in 2020, they had D+5 and Biden plus 4.5 was the final result. Finally, 2024 is R+3. So on average, Gallup is only about a half a percentage point off from what the actual popular vote will be, which means Trump plus 2.5 nationally is very possible. So that would be very interesting. I think Trump's going to win. I did talk to another friend who thinks the polls were overcorrecting for Republicans, but I just don't see it. Most of the polls I look at have a Dem advantage of much more than what the actual electorate will be. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think people have been tampering with these polls to boost Kamala's campaign. I
And the
mean,
thing is,
good.
Kamala's internal polls do not show a good picture for her.
They show her losing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, the guy, Mark Halprin from Bloomberg News, said that he saw some of Kamala's internal polls and he said they were not good for her. He said that she's struggling in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
Hmm.
He said that, and this is a big sign because her polls, her private polls, are not going to paint a sugar high picture for her.
Yeah, they're not
If
gonna.
you're do,
They're not propaganda.
yeah, if you're conducting polls for a campaign and you actually want to win, you're not going to push any fluff out.
Yeah.
But no, I think Trump has a pretty good shot at pulling this off.
I'm relieved by that a little bit. I don't like counting my eggs before they're hatched, but um
Well, no, disclaimer to anybody who watches this street video: you gotta go vote. This is
yeah.
not over until it's over.
Oh
So
yeah.
don't look at this video and think it's all good. We're gonna win. Go out and vote, and make sure you bring at least two other people in your life to go and vote for Trump as well.
Well, we also talked about this earlier. There's a possibility where either Kamala wins narrowly or Trump sweeps, if you know what I mean. Those as being the two possibilities, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the range of possibilities. I mean, the average margin of error is 3 points. So if you look at the current national vote, the national vote could be anywhere from Kamala plus 5 to Trump plus 5.
Mhm.
However, a Kamala plus 5 is a narrow victory for her in the Electoral College because the Democrat has to win the popular vote by 4 to be the favorite in the Electoral College. So her
Mhm.
being up by 5 would just be right over the threshold she needs to win, while Trump being up by 5 would actually be 9 points above where he needs to be, which would be, I mean, you would see if Trump was up by 5, you would probably see like definitely New Hampshire, Minnesota, Virginia, Maine would all go red. I think New Mexico would be at the cusp of going red.
Yeah,
That would be nice. But if we want that outcome, we got to work for it and we got to vote for it.
definitely. I mean, assuming a Trump victory, what do you think will happen after that?
Well, I think the deportations are happening.
Of course.
I
You think
think I think Trump's not going to play as nice as he did his first term. His first term, he tried to offer an olive branch to some people in Washington. This time around, I think he's going to be a lot more forceful with the executive orders. I think I think he's going to instruct McConnell to nuke the filibuster and just start passing some of the legislation he wants done.
Hmm.
I think he means business this time around.
I mean, do you think there'll be enough of a demographic change in the U.S. that we'll have more of a shot? Like it'll be America will become significantly redder because of these
Yeah,
deportations?
I think so. I think along with that, also Trump, if Republicans win Congress, Trump could also get some election integrity laws passed on a national stage,
Hmm.
which would make the electorate redder.
That's fantastic. No wonder Dems are biting their nails over this. Um,
Well, I think they know the gig is up. They have 20 days and then it's over.
I mean, my mind also is on the future of the character of the Republican Party. I actually have some high hopes for Vance. Um,
I do
being this,
too.
yeah, I was gonna say, being just knowing that have you seen the memes about JD Vance being influenced by Curtis Yarvin?
I have not.
Hold on. Uh, well, okay, so JD Vance thinks monarchists have some good ideas, taking inspiration from neo-reactionary bloggers. Vance has suggested doing away with the federal bureaucracy. And this is reflective of Trump's desire to fire a lot of federal employees. Uh, JD Vance is apparently theory pilled. There is a based um, monarchist blogger named Curtis Yarvin, also known as Mencius Moldbug, who Vance is apparently familiar with. Of course,
Hmm.
the common link between these two is Peter Thiel. Um, and being the type of person who could have been a nerd that got shoved into lockers, I love Curtis Yarvin. So, um, I I have high hopes for the direction of the American right, assuming a Trump victory.
Hmm.
Um,
And plus, at least on the religious scale, Vance is also part of like the post-liberal movement as well.
interesting, interesting.
And that doesn't mean normal political. That doesn't mean like political liberalism. That means, I mean, modern liberalism. He's talking more of like post-liberalism, as in post-classical liberalism and the Enlightenment as well.
Yeah,
That he
that
rejects.
has connotations of like post-liberal Catholicism, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Uh,
still, I mean, which still to a degree, it's definitely a better ideology than like one of those libertarians who keeps saying I'm a classical liberal or something like that.
yeah. Well, in my view, like, I mean, that era is over. The Reaganite faction of the Republican Party has to die. We have to
Mhm.
wake up to the reality that America needs to be a um needs economic nationalism to be competitive globally. This era of free markets has only been injurious, has only proved itself harmful to the American people. Dems want to continue that and continue to expropriate wealth from the middle class, and Republicans are the only recourse. The Republican Party is the only recourse we have to ensure that people are
Mhm.
still able to live decent lives and accrue wealth. And we should really be aiming for economic independence, if you ask me.
Yep, I agree.
I'm a big believer in autarky. Um, I mean, I think this is I'm not optimistic about this because again, this election alone could go badly, but it'll probably take several generations of people doing the right thing to even dig our way out of this hole. We'll need some way to address the Federal Reserve. Um, but
Well,
I mean,
keep in mind, do you know what Trump actually said before the assassination attempts began? He actually said this in June, a month before his first attempt.
what was that?
He said in a speech, "You know, I don't think the Federal Reserve is doing a good job. I think I should run it." So he was making speeches where he was talking about kicking out the privately held Federal Reserve and putting himself in control of it.
Well, as I say, Jerome Powell is obviously worried about his job security, and the Federal Reserve conspicuously lowered interest rates like a couple months, right as the election kicked into high gear and Kamala became the candidate, they lowered interest rates, so the left could claim that as an economic victory, even though that's the whole thing about the Kamala campaign. It's just so many ridiculous promises. Like she's really going around telling people that she's going to be better on the border than Trump. Like who is this messaging for? It's so schizophrenic. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it shows that that Trump, at least Trump has won. Trump has won on the public opinion on those issues. So as a result, she realizes she has to run to the right in order to have a shot at winning to gaining some trust on those key issues that voters don't trust her party on.
Yeah, but it's still such a strange appeal.
I guess she's hoping that the liberals just hold their nose and still vote for her while she's trying to win some moderates who might be upset over immigration,
Yeah, trying to sell them on the idea that somehow she can do it better.
which I don't think she can at all.
Well, yeah, we saw that Fox News interview where the guy literally asked her the question that's on everyone's minds, like, "What change are you actually going to bring?" And she couldn't answer it, because she's still
Yeah,
kind of.
I thought that interview was a disaster.
Oh yeah, that was brutal. That was like, oh man.
I mean, Trump's odds on Polymarket shot up, I think, 10 points after that interview was released.
Well, yeah, I was going to say all the gamblers suddenly changed their minds after that interview, and then all the polling changed as well. I was like, yeah, you guys are fair weather
Well,
fans.
the polling was shifting before the interview.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
things were slowly shifting in the betting markets before the interview, but after the interview, I mean, she just collapsed. I mean, if you take a look, the betting odds now have Trump at 62%.
Yeah,
She she just completely collapsed on whatchamacallit, the betting odds.
yeah. She just totally imploded. Well, especially with like high income whites, like their big thing is fear over what Trump will do to democracy. I'm like, that argument doesn't really have that much more appeal. People have already heard it. Kamala's basically running an entire campaign on the fact that she's not Trump. And I don't think that'll be obviously that messaging wouldn't appeal to me, but it's also like I don't know how effective that's going to be because most people have probably already kind of heard those arguments, and if they're swayed by them, they're swayed by them, and if they're not, they're not. It's not substantial. She's really bringing no substance to the table. She can only appeal to people who already are like dyed in the wool anti-Trump people. That's my view of the situation.
I agree.
There was that lip syncing video of Obama and Biden in the church where Biden was saying he'd be a stronger candidate. Like, this is why. Like, she's picked up no one, basically.
Well, they threw a person that never won a single primary into the race as a nominee.
Yeah.
Think of it that way. Like she was selected. She wasn't elected. She was selected.
She seems very unprepared for it all.
Hmm. She
And not
is.
that,
I don't think she was ready for this.
yeah. I mean, if she weren't trying to destroy the country so blatantly, I would almost feel bad for her.
Hmm.
And not to mention
I mean,
also,
at this point, I kind of feel bad for Biden, if you want me to be honest.
oh yeah, he's just been sidelined.
They threw him aside like a piece of rotten meat.
Yeah, they really did. Also, high income whites being the highest propensity voters, something that sort of indicates in our favor on the right is that the mail in ballots have been already kind of spent. And, high income whites are the highest propensity voters, and high propensity voters are more likely to vote early. And the amount of mail in ballots has basically kind of plateaued. So, unless they see a surge in the next 3 or so weeks, like they're not going to gain anything. And as you've said before, in person voting does heavily skew Republican.
I agree. And the thing that they're scared about this year is even the mail early vote this year is not as heavily Democratic as it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, well, there are now suddenly like 75% less mail ins. Any closing thoughts?
I think Trump's in a good spot right now. He's in a better spot than he was. He's in a better spot than he was even 8 years ago in 2016. But can't be complacent. We got to show up. We got to vote, and we got to make this a reality.
Definitely, definitely. Anyway, that's it for this video. This has been the second official Red Channels election prediction. Get out there and vote, and we will catch you in the next one.